back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. This episode marks our brand new short form interview series, checking in with as we catch up with Carlow star Cliodhna Ni Shé. This episode was recorded a number of months ago, and Cliodhna at the time was 7 weeks post tearing her ACL. The Carlow Ladies footballer details the highs and lows of the initial injury. I hope you enjoy. Hi Cliodhna, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
No problem, thanks a million for having me.
You had a fantastic year last year, and I suppose International Women's Day was the week before this. So in honour of that, who were your role models growing up?
My role models growing up, there's a good few of them. Definitely I remember going to see Sinead Ahern play for Dublin. I remember that All-Ireland final that they won. I think it was against Tyrone, and she scored 2 or 3 goals that day. So she was always someone that I looked up to growing up. And then, of course, like back then there wasn't much, well, not that I'm that old, but like there wasn't as much publicity for the women's. I always went to all the matches that I could, but I would have watched a lot of the men's, and I would have always had kind of like Colm Cooper. I kind of would have always watched him.
Brilliant. Very good. Sinead, I think, is turning back the clock. She hasn't really aged much, has she, since the Tyrone game?
She's only gotten better since then.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any particular player, I know you looked up to those two obviously as a forward, but is there any particular player you feel like you've modelled your game around? Is it those two, or have you just kind of picked different elements off different players?
Yeah, probably picked different elements off different players. I probably learned the most kind of from my coaches and from the girls around me, kind of the older girls in the club and stuff like that. I wouldn't say there's any player. I would have watched Louise Neverhertig, who plays for Kerry. And she actually knows my cousin, so I've met her a good few times. And I would have always like looked up to her and tried to like score as much as she could. And like that, she's another one.
I think she's nearly underrated in the ladies' game. I just think people don't realise how much of a talent she is, and I love watching Louise. I just think she's something else.
Me too. I used to always go watch their games because she lives right beside my cousin, so I would have been mad into that. Yeah, she's so good.
Yeah, serious talent. Who would have brought you down to your first training session? Who got you involved in Gaelic football?
Well, my dad, probably. Like my whole family, like my mum is as well, very into Gaelic football. But my brother, I have an older brother, he's 3 years older than me, and him and my dad would have been out playing like the whole time growing up. So then I just wanted to go out and the competitive side, I wanted to be better than him and all that. So it was my dad would have been bringing me down, but my mum's hugely involved in the club now as well.
You played a bit of soccer as well growing up. When did you start playing? With, I presume, the same time as Gaelic football, or was it a little bit later then?
Yeah, I'd say it was the same time. Yeah, because I just would have joined the local soccer club, which my parents were quite involved with as well. I think my dad trained me under 7. Yeah, so I was very into soccer. I only gave up soccer kind of in first year college. It was just kind of too much with the travelling.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fair. How did you manage to balance both sports at the underage level, being involved in Carlow, having soccer, having school, social life? There's so much going on. I think there's a lot of pressure on kids, even if you're playing up age groups in the two sports. How did you balance everything in terms of time management, injury prevention?
Yeah, it was very tough, especially because like I'm from Carlow, obviously small county, so if you're a girl that plays sport, they want you to play everything in every age group, and you could be playing under 12, under 14, under 16, all this. Probably like at the time, probably had a good few arguments with my parents, but to be honest, like they were so good, they would never let me do too much, which at the time I obviously felt like I was able, because you're 11 years old and you're invincible. But I would have played everything I could have, but they kind of restricted me and said maybe only one age group up in club, or one age group up. I never really played above my age group in county because I was playing soccer as well, and then I would have played one age group up with club, and that was hard because I could see my friends were playing up as well, and I was like wanted to and felt bad. You feel like you're letting people down, but I like credit to my parents, I like until now hadn't had any serious injuries, so it was definitely very helpful.
When you get to that underage level, you're obviously enjoying sport, that's why we play, but at what point does hard work come into both sports and kind of realise, kind of showing up to training for where I want to go and what I want to achieve probably isn't enough. I need to do things outside of training here, as in team training.
Yeah, it actually happened with like that realisation would have come a lot sooner in soccer, because I started playing soccer for a club in Dublin for Peamount, and you're coming from Carlow, whereas maybe one of 3 girls my age that played soccer, so obviously I thought it was brilliant. And then you go up and you see loads of other girls who've been playing and training their whole lives, and it was a wake up call. And it was kind of from then on that I would have worked a lot on my own game myself. But until then, I was playing just with the team and stuff. So it would have been 10 or 11 in soccer then. And I probably was a bit older before I realised like there was a lot more I had to do behind the scenes, like not that team training wasn't enough.
Yeah, I know what you mean. In terms of Gaelic football, you take frees. At what stage did you start taking frees? What age were you, and how often would you practice those frees, particularly at a kind of the younger age where you're trying to develop a routine, see what works for you?
I probably didn't think about it too much until I was well into secondary school. Because when I was younger, so I played with the boys growing up, and then when I went over to play with the girls, I was one of the few that had played before. So I probably just took the frees. I can't really remember that much, but it wouldn't have been until I was in about maybe second or third year in secondary school that I was like, okay, this is something I want to be good at. So I went and started practicing, and I went to the GA club with my little brother. We used to go and have free taking competitions for hours. So it was kind of then that I realized like it's not something like, even if you are good at kicking naturally, you actually do have to go practice, and it's a lot mentally as well, just practicing the same routine over and over again.
Do you think we nearly complicate free taking? I maybe do it too much even on the podcast. I ask people a lot of questions about free taking, and it's like as simple as you say, you just kind of get used to it, get into your routine and stick it over the bar.
Yeah, it's not something I would think about too often. I would go and practice, but I'm practicing kicking from play as well. I wouldn't say that I'm going just because I take the frees.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you, obviously when you're not injured, but is there any particular pitch routine is in your practice? Do you follow any particular drills when you go practicing, just for any of the younger players that might be listening?
Not really. I would always say to go with someone. Like if my brother can't go, I go with a friend. It's so much more enjoyable having someone to go with. I usually we'd make a competition out of it. Try with your right foot first. We could take like 3 from the right hand side, 3 from the middle, 3 from the left, and then go again with your left foot. Everything I do on my right, I do on my left, even though I've never taken a free with my left foot. But just to practice, because like if you can kick a free, you can kick from play. It's always going to benefit you in every way.
Totally. What do you think separates you as a player from the rest of the competition? Obviously last year was phenomenal. You did phenomenal scoring record for the championship season in 5 games, but what do you think separates you from a player aside from maybe your scoring?
I don't know, it's a good question. Well, I like to think that I'm like, even though obviously what people see is that I score, but that I'd be quite unselfish. Like I'd never try to do it myself. I'd try to bring all the girls into the game as well, as much as they bring me into the game. Do you know what I mean?
Do you find much of a crossover between soccer and Gaelic? And obviously when you're kicking, obviously there's going to be a huge crossover there, but do you find skill wise or tactically, is there just something that you can kind of attribute soccer to your ability on the Gaelic football pitch?
I'd say definitely tactically. Like you learn so much more playing soccer. Like we would have done a stat session every week, and the tactics board up and stuff like that. And it's probably like I would think about tactics more, or even just be used to getting that feedback constantly, whereas we wouldn't have gotten that very often in Gaelic football with Carlow. Now we are this year, there's been a huge increase in the kind of the stats side of it and the tactics side of it. But I'd say there were girls for years that hadn't really done much tactics or stuff like that. So soccer really prepares you for that, and kind of you're used to taking that information on board. It's not just to get out on the pitch and do whatever feels right. You have a plan and stuff like that. So definitely a lot of that in soccer, which I would say has helped me definitely with Gaelic football.
When you're watching any games, there's always I always laugh on Twitter. It's someone tweeted during last season. It was like, I'm watching a bloody basketball game, or this is just pure soccer. What do you ever find when you're watching a Gaelic football match there? It's like, this is really tactically, like this is something maybe I'd seen in soccer. Or if you're watching a basketball game, you'll see all backdoor cuts. Male or female?
The men's game seems to have gone very much that way, but it's a lot less in the women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't be as much, I don't think.
No.
Maybe this year I was watching Meath and Dublin in the league, and they definitely had some sort of, the pair of them were up to something on the kickouts. They both had a lot of, I think it wasn't maybe soccer, it wasn't maybe basketball, there was a lot of tactics going on in those kickouts. Who would you, at the moment, obviously you're injured, but is there any particular player you love watching in the game at the moment in ladies football or men?
Yeah, well, I love watching. I'd watch as many games as I could. I love watching Amy Mackin. I think she's phenomenal. Like some of the scores she gets like are brilliant.
What's been the best advice you've received from a player or coach over your career? What would be? Is there anything kind of stand out for you?
Um, Best advice. I'm not sure about that. I had a coach. I remember. I think it was when I was 15 or 16, and I had just come up to play on the senior team for my club, and like I was coming up having played every age group, and usually trying to do way too much myself, and he kind of bullied that out of me at the time, and was like, this is senior now, you're not going to be able to do it all yourself. And I see it even with other girls coming up who've kind of been the main players underage, and they come up and they get kind of lost at senior because you think you're going to have so much time on the ball and try to do too much. And I changed my game so much after that, and that was definitely the best bit of coaching I had gotten.
Okay, who was your toughest opponent kind of coming up to the senior panel? Was there anyone that just kind of stood out, or maybe trying to welcome you into senior football?
um oh, I don't know now. The club at the time, there was no, I probably wasn't that clued in at the time to who I was playing against. I wouldn't be thinking about it, just go put the jersey on and play.
Yeah, is that your mentality even up to last year, where you're just kind of going in, not like you don't care, that's the wrong word, but it's kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to do my job here. I don't really, doesn't really matter who I'm marking. I'm just going to go for goal or go for score, and set up my
Yeah,
teammates as well.
yeah, definitely. I wouldn't really be thinking too much. Like, obviously I'm thinking about it, but I would just be a normal day the day before. I wouldn't be. I don't really get nervous before games at all. So
Are you superstitious at all?
no, not really. I do eat the same thing, but that's more because I think it agrees with my body. Like, it wouldn't bother me if I couldn't. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't. Nah, I wouldn't really be
Yeah,
superstitious.
you'd nine goals, 19 points in 5 championship games. Um, that is ridiculous. Can you just give us a bit of a, not explanation, but what's that like going in? I think that I don't. My maths isn't good enough to average it. You might be quicker than me, but that's a serious scoring tally in 5 championship games.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really realize it was happening until I think it was after the Limerick match or something. It was up on Facebook or something. I wasn't even aware of it. I'd never even after a game. I usually wouldn't even remember what I'd scored. It's not something I would say after a game whether I thought I played well or not. It wouldn't be based on what I've scored. Obviously, that is a good indication, but it wouldn't bother me if I didn't score in a game as long as the team had done well. So yeah, it was a bit surreal when it all was happening. I didn't really realize what was going on.
Out of interest, then, what would you measure? To like, how would you define a successful performance then if you don't base it on scoring?
Well, it was more so I would say I like that it wouldn't be the sole thing I would base it on, but I just like getting on the ball enough and then not give like making sure that every time I've gotten the ball that something good has come from it, that I haven't lost it or there hasn't been a turnover, and would be the main thing I would base my game off.
Very good. Obviously, last year, you were knocked out in the beaten by Antrim. What do you think is the biggest change that's been with the management, the new management coming in this year? You mentioned the tactics. What's kind of been that biggest shift so far? Do you think?
Um, the training is brilliant. Like, it's brought us to a whole new level. It's the kind of the fact that what we're doing in training is what we want to implement in matches, and there's a clear, you can see that what's happening in training and will benefit us in matches, and when it happens in the match, like, you can see the benefit for us. And that would be the main thing. We've got purpose. There's purpose in everything we do. And yeah, so it's very good.
What would be the most underrated skill, do you think, in the game at the moment? Is there anything that players or coaches are not really looking at that you think is very important?
Well, kicking, I would say, like, there's a lot of girls that are like playing at such a high level and kind of wouldn't be that comfortable kicking the ball a long distance. I think, sometimes women's football, like, if you're fit and you can hop the ball or catch the ball, it's grand. But I would say kicking is very underrated
Yeah,
sometimes.
definitely. I had Hannah Tyrrell on, and she was saying, or was it Kira Trant? I can't remember. One of them was definitely saying about kind of the instep. You don't. There's so much punt kicking in ladies football.
Yeah, nearly everyone punt kicks it, and that's such a women's thing. I don't know why. I don't know where we thought that when we were
Yeah, I
younger.
think that's they were saying it's when you're coached at a younger age. Like, I played with the boys, and we were taught how to punt kick. or sorry, to hook kick and kick it off the instep.
Yeah, you can tell that who's played with the boys when they were younger because they kick with their instep.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think, from a lady's perspective, obviously you've played with the boys, I play with the boys, I see the benefit of playing with the boys at underage levels. I think girls should really try, and it's something I've
Yeah.
seen. It's great to see so many younger girls playing, and the reason why I played with the boys was there was no younger girls team, but I think that still should be encouraged, that girls do play with the boys. What would be your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree because yeah, I loved playing with the boys when I was younger, and you can kind of tell, when you're 8 or 9, who has played with the boys and who hasn't. It is great to see the younger girls having teams for themselves, and there's probably girls that wouldn't play if they had to play with the boys. So I don't know. There's probably an argument for both cases, but I think mixing young boys and girls playing sport, for as long as possible would definitely be beneficial for everyone.
Of interest, you did your ACL. How disappointing is that after having such a phenomenal year? Coming into 2022, obviously you wanted to build on that season as a team and individually. How big of a disappointment was that for you individually?
I know it was very, very tough. It's very hard to take. I don't know if it's even really sunk in yet, but
How are you finding the recovery so far and being kind of on the sideline watching your teammates?
yeah, it's tough, but it's nice to be there for the girls. I missed the first league match because I'd gotten surgery the day before. So it's nice now to be able to be around the girls. And to be honest, yeah, you're quite busy with the recovery as well and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs, but yeah, I know it is.
Yeah, I've heard particularly ACL recovery, it's kind of like not a full-time job, but it's like a part-time job with
Yeah,
all the stuff you have to
very
do.
time consuming. Very time consuming. Well, not really yet for me. I'm still at the start, so still doing the small stuff. But yeah, once it gets going, I think it's fairly intense.
Have you read Bernard Brogan's book out of interest?
No, I
Well
haven't.
worth it. He goes a lot into his injury about his ACL. I think you'll
Oh,
really
really?
enjoy it. Yeah, and he kind of bases the book not around the injury, but it's kind of like the main chapters are those last 2 years, and he kind of looks back.
Yeah,
So I definitely recommend it.
yeah, I'll give that a
Yeah,
read.
we've mentioned the kicking. For ladies football, what strides would you like to see the game make over the next 5 or 10 years? Obviously, the support has been phenomenal, and Little coming on board, and the difference in attendance, even obviously before COVID. But what would you like to see the game improve on and make strides with?
Yeah, like it's come on so far, and you can watch every match is like available to watch every weekend, which is brilliant. It'd be nice, I suppose, to set to see Croke Park sell out on All Ireland final day, even like the All Ireland final this year, like the atmosphere was amazing. It was like noticeably different from other years. So I think if we could grow on that and look at selling out Croke Park, that'd be phenomenal.
When you go back to 2010 and that Dublin Tyrone game, and now the Hill is open, it just shows how big of a jump it's made in 11 years. It's scary to
Yeah, it's
think.
huge.
I think it will happen. I just don't know how long it'll take for Croke Park to sell out eventually.
Yeah, you'd love to see it though.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not retiring yet, and I'm not going to retire you soon. But out of interest, when you do hang up the boots, what type of player would you like to be remembered for?
Um, Player with a good work ethic, like that works hard.
Brilliant. What's been the biggest lesson you've learned from sport so far?
Oh, got so many, so many lessons. I suppose resilience. Like in a smaller sense, if you miss a free, having to, you know, take the next one and just try forget about it. And then obviously injuries and losses and stuff like that, to learn how to deal with them.
Totally. Who would be your toughest opponent so far? Who's just been stood out for you? Do you think at club or county level?
Sarah Jane Winders from Wicklow. I always say her is my toughest opponent. Because there was a while there, we played Wicklow a few times, and she's just a brilliant, brilliant defender and is always right there beside you.
Would you rather make the winning score or the winning block?
Winning block. I love making a good block because I don't do it very often.
What rule changes would you like to see in the game? That's a bit of a controversial one, but is there anything you'd like to see from? You can take it from any sport.
Yeah, a bit more physicality, like shouldering being allowed and stuff like that. It's currently fairly non-contact, even though it is does be a good bit of contact. So yeah, bit more physicality. You would just like to see it a bit more free flowing and let the shouldering go and stuff like that.
If there's any younger listeners, is there a particular checklist you'd like to see, or is there a particular checklist to become an inter-county footballer?
No, I don't think so. I feel like, if you work hard enough and work on your skills and stuff like that, I feel like anybody could make it. But obviously depends on the county. But just work hard and enjoy it as well. I wouldn't place too much emphasis on your enjoyment of the sport, on how you achieve or whether you've made this team or not. Because then at the end of the day, you're not gonna enjoy yourself, and that's why we play football.
Brilliant. AFLW has become very big, particularly for Irish players. Is that something potentially, obviously you're injured at the moment, but down the line, have you interest in AFLW? Do you find yourself watching it much? Is it something you'd like to maybe try at some point?
I've actually watched a bit of it this year for the first time. Yeah, but it's interesting. I definitely don't really understand the rules at the moment, but it looks good. Definitely would prefer Gaelic football, but yeah.
Very good. I'm going to move on to sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1: what is your favourite quote?
I wouldn't be mad for inspirational quotes, but I like that, you miss 100% the shots that you don't take. So as a forward, obviously, sometimes we don't take shots just because you're afraid you're going to miss. So
brilliant. Question 2: what's been the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a player.
As a fan, the All-Ireland final last year, I just thought I was on the edge of my seat. I wasn't even up for any team, but I just was up shouting because it was such a. As a player, the county final this year was really, really good. Because there was a huge support from the club, and it was in a good pitch that had a stand, which was nice. So, yeah.
Question 3: what's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
Well, doing my ACL 7 weeks ago. So I think I've reacted fairly well, but come back to me in 8 months. I'll let you know.
Question 4: what's been your biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
So biggest achievement on the pitch would be winning Junior Player of the Year last year, and just be voted by the players that you're playing against, and then the fact that we weren't in the All-Ireland final, and usually it's someone from those teams, so that was huge achievement. I was delighted with that. Question
5: looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? You're only 22, so but
yeah, don't have to look back that far. I don't know, probably just to enjoy it as much as you can, because even now looking back, I don't know what was going on when I was 18, but just to enjoy every training session. And I was actually at a talk the other day. Tom Parson said, play every game as if it's your last, which I think is really good, because I know I will be back playing football in 8 or 9 months or whatever, but I can't even remember what happened in my last match, and I wish I had appreciated as much as I wish I could play now.
Yeah. Do you have a bad memory then of games when you're playing? Do you find afterwards you just can't really remember anything?
Yeah. I never remember anything that happens in them. I usually, if I can, I'd watch the game again if it has been videoed, because I can never remember.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you picked up much from watching yourself back? Is it obviously the first time it's probably a bit strange, but do you find it helpful to kind of see yourself, and have you picked out anything in particular?
Yeah, I would if I could, I always would look to watch the games back, and I love getting feedback and videos and stuff. I don't know what the most I've learned is probably that I used to always turn to one side, or you can kind of see yourself doing the same things over and over again, which obviously if someone is going to study you, then they'll see that. So yeah, that's probably the most that I've learned.
Question 6: who would be your dream dinner guest and why? You can open up the table to a few people if you want.
Probably Cora Staunton. I'd love to have her for dinner. I read her book and it's very interesting, and obviously she's a phenomenal athlete and brilliant footballer.
Final question before I let you go: if your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
The Climb.
Love it. Cliodhna, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast. I'll be sure to leave all your social media links in the description box below, and thanks again. Very best of luck with your recovery.
Thanks a million. Thank you.
A big thank you to Cliodhna for joining me on the podcast today to mark the first edition of our brand new short form interview series, Checking In. If you are enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Sideline Live, and check out our website thesidelinelive.com for more.